In 1917, in the middle of a world tearing itself apart, Rudolf Steiner delivered a series of lectures that almost no one in the Western spiritual community has seriously read. In those lectures, he described two cosmic forces. Not metaphors, not moral categories, but intelligences that operate on the soul in opposite directions. He called one Lucifer, the other a Riemann. And then he said something that should have changed everything. The spiritual seeker, the one who meditates, who reads, who practices, who searches for more, is not failing. They are being pulled by a force older than their choices, more intelligent than their willpower, and most active in precisely the people who are most genuinely searching. What you've been calling a bad habit has a name, and that name is not yours. Before we dive in, if this kind of content resonates with you, come find me at luminaryflow.com. There's a free gift waiting for you. You'll find the link in the top comment below. Now let's get back into it. Before Steiner named this force, he described it. And the description is not what you would expect. It does not feel like avoidance. Imagine you've been meditating for several years. You have read widely. Jung, the Gnostics, the mystics, the Upanishads. You have had experiences you cannot fully explain. Moments of profound stillness, of losing all sense of where you end and the world begins, of something that felt unmistakably like contact with something real. You have organized your life as much as possible around the protection of those states. You avoid what feels dense or low or spiritually regressive. You're careful about what you read, who you spend time with, what you let in. You feel with some justification that you are more sensitive than most people, and that this sensitivity requires maintenance. Nothing about this pattern announces itself as avoidance. It announces itself as discernment. And that is precisely what makes it Luciferic. According to Steiner, Lucifer is not the adversary of Christian mythology. He is not a symbol of evil, or rebellion, or moral failure. He is a cosmic principle, the intelligence of spiritual inflation, or the pull upward and away from earthly density. Lucifer in Steiner's cosmology does not despise the seeker. He loves them. He wants to elevate them. He offers genuine light. The problem is that it's incomplete. Consider what inflation means in the Jungian sense. When the ego encounters a genuine archetype, the self, the shadow, the divine, there are two possible responses. The first is integration. The ego relates to the archetype, learns from it, is changed by it, but remains intact. The other is inflation. The ego cannot hold the distance. It merges with the archetype. It becomes it. Inflation does not feel like losing yourself. It feels like finally becoming what you were always meant to be. The Luciferic seeker has not encountered a false spiritual experience. They have encountered a real one. The error is not in the experience. The error is in mistaking the experience for what you are. Neuroscience has actually mapped this. Research on the default mode network, the part of the brain response for your sense of self, reveals something surprising about transcendent states. In moments of genuine mystical experience, that network goes quiet. The sense of self becomes weak or disappears entirely. This is experienced as expansion, as liberation, as contact with something beyond the personal. But the research shows something unexpected. Integration, the experience actually changing how you behave, how you relate to life, who you fundamentally are, requires the same network to be fully active. It requires the self to be present and functioning. The state that opens the door is the same state that blocks you from walking through it. Transcendence and integration are not two stages of the same process. They are neurologically opposite conditions. Which means the seeker who reaches for higher states whenever things get heavy, whenever the grief hits, whenever the same pattern shows up in the relationship again, whenever the wound makes itself known, is not choosing avoidance. They're following a pull that feels indistinguishable from spiritual instinct. And every time they follow it, the distance between their experience and their integration quietly grows. What is it exactly they're running from? The answer is a Riemann. Here is where Steiner's framework becomes dangerous if you misread it. A Riemann sounds like the villain, the cold intelligence, the force of heaviness, of materialism, of density. Everything the spiritual seeker has already decided to move away from. And so the casual reading of Steiner's cosmology would follow a familiar grammar. Lucifer is the seduction of false light, Ahriman is the seduction of false darkness, and the path is to resist both. This is the reading that makes the whole idea useless. A Riemann isn't something to avoid. He is something you have to go through. The avoidance itself is the problem, not what you're avoiding. Steiner's Riemann is not evil in any sense. He is the principle of incarnation itself. He is the intelligence of weight, of density, of limit, of everything earthly. He is present in everything that solidifies, that takes form. He is in the body when it aches, in the relationship when it gets hard, in the pattern that keeps showing up. He is in the grief that will not go away, in the anger that will not resolve into acceptance, in the part of your life that refuses to become spiritual content. He is, in other words, the texture of actual experience. And this is what the Luciferic seeker cannot enter. Not because they're weak, not because they lack courage, but because every time the weight shows up, every time things get dense, difficult, unbearably earthly, the Luciferic pull activates. They retreat into meditation, into elevated discourse, into the luminous abstraction of higher understanding. This is not evasion, more like instinct. What feels in every fiber like the correct spiritual direction. Picture what this looks like across years. The seeker accumulates genuine experiences, real openings, authentic moments of contact with something beyond the ordinary. Their vocabulary becomes increasingly precise. They can speak fluently about the shadow, about projection, about the mechanics of unconscious process. They understand in considerable intellectual depth why integration matters. And the grief is still there, still exactly where it was, untouched inside a life that has organized itself with great sophistication around not touching it. This is the signature of the Lucifer-Ahriman imbalance. And it is almost invisible from the inside because the seeker's growth is real and understanding is genuine. The experiences are not fabricated. The only thing missing is the processing, and that can only happen in the body. Contemporary trauma research has arrived at this same conclusion through an entirely different route. The work of Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine, among others, demonstrates something the spiritual traditions have always known. The mind cannot complete what the body has not processed. Cognitive understanding of a pattern, no matter how deep, no matter how precisely articulated, does not alter the nervous system's response to that pattern. The body keeps its own record, independent of insight. And the record is only rewritten through the body. And it maps precisely onto Steiner's Ahrimanic principle, because Ahriman is not the force that destroys the seeker. He is the force that makes them real. He is the gravitational field through which experience becomes transformation rather than accumulation. Without him, without the density, the weight, the earthly, nothing integrates. It only elevates. And elevation without integration is not freedom. It is a very beautiful way of going nowhere. The seeker who has spent 10 years reaching upward has not wasted 10 years, but they have perhaps been moving in only one direction. And the path that only ascends is not a spiritual path. It is a path away from life, which leaves us with a question. Not how do I resist the Luciferic pull, but what would it mean to stop bracing against Ahriman and actually let yourself go there? The question has an answer in Steiner's cosmology, but the answer is not what either force would have you believe. This is where Steiner's framework becomes genuinely difficult. Not intellectually, the structure is clear enough. The difficulty is in what it asks of you. He called it the Christ principle. He was not speaking of the historical figure. He was not speaking of religion. He was speaking of a cosmic event, one that he believed had altered the metaphysical structure of the earth itself. And he used that name because he believed no other concept in the Western tradition had yet developed the language to hold what he meant. What he meant was this. Before a certain moment in human evolution, the soul would be moving between the Luciferic and the Ahrimanic without a center, drifting upwards into dissolution, sinking downward into pure density, with no stable point between them. The spiritual path in this condition was a kind of oscillation, moments of genuine luminosity alternating with collapse into the merely earthly, with no stable point to return to between them. The Christ principle in Steiner's cosmology is the introduction of a third force, not a compromise between the two, not a moderation of their extremes, a different quality entirely. One that does not pull in either direction but holds the tension between ascent and descent without resolving it prematurely into either. That makes it possible for the first time to be simultaneously in contact with the luminous and rooted in the earthly without losing your footing. Jung called this the transcendent function. When the psyche is held between two opposing forces long enough, without collapsing into either one, something new emerges. Not a compromise between the two, something that wasn't available before the tension was held. The transcendent function does not operate through insight. It does not operate through understanding. It operates through staying, through remaining present in the tension long enough for something to shift that you could not have forced. Research on post-traumatic growth found something similar. The people who experienced genuine transformation were not those who processed the experience most thoroughly. They were those who stayed with the unresolved tension longest. Without forcing a conclusion or shutting down, the transformation arrived not as something they figured out. It arrived as a new capacity, the ability to carry the tension without needing to resolve it. This is the Christ principle in Steiner's sense, the capacity to remain between the Luciferic pull and the Ahrimanic weight, long enough for the integration to occur that neither force operating alone can produce, not choosing one, not oscillating between them. And here's what this means for the seeker who has recognized themselves in what has been described. The work is not to stop seeking. The Luciferic experiences are real. The openings are genuine. The luminosity you encounter in those states is not fabricated, and the path does not require you to abandon it. Nor is the work to manufacture difficulty. Deliberately forcing yourself into darkness is not Ahrimanic integration. It is the same avoidance in different clothing. The work is to stand, to remain present at the exact point where the pull upward meets the weight downward, to neither follow the elevation nor resist the density, to hold that position, however uncomfortable, however unresolved, and let the integration happen. It happens in specific moments of daily life, and only when you notice which force is moving through you. You now have that recognition. Steiner believed that the whispering never stops, that Lucifer and Ahriman do not withdraw once you have named them, that the pull upward continues, that the weight continues, that the cosmological tension between these forces is not a problem the seeker solves and moves past, but the permanent condition of incarnated consciousness, the field within which every choice, every moment of genuine presence, every act of standing rather than following takes place. Steiner offered this as an orientation. There is a difference between being pulled without knowing it and being pulled while knowing what is pulling you. The seeker who cannot recognize these forces just follows. The Luciferic upward pull feels like spiritual instinct. The Ahrimanic weight feels like personal failure. The oscillation between them feels like the path itself. But understanding what is moving through you means you no longer have to follow it blindly. This is not freedom from the pull, but the ability to see it for what it is when it happens. Of standing exactly where you are. Of neither following the light away from the weight, nor collapsing into the weight away from the light. Steiner called this the work of the present age, not floating above life, not grinding through it, staying awake inside it. You are somewhere right now on that spectrum, between the pull and the weight, between the luminous and the dense, between what calls you upward and what asks you to stay. The question is not which direction to move. The question is whether you can feel both forces simultaneously and remain still. If this resonated with you, come find me at luminaryflow.com. There's a free gift waiting for you there, and you'll also receive my newsletter with thoughts and inspiration behind each video. You'll find the link in the top comment below.